This What the Hell creature was submitted by Hedregal on our Patreon. Megalania. What the hell was it? Well, even its name stems from controversy. Richard Owen first coined the name Megalania by using the Greek-based word elano, meaning roamer, so ancient giant roamer. The problem is most people look at Lania and think it's Latin-based to mean butcher, so ancient giant butcher, which is incorrect. But none of that even matters because Megalania is no longer considered to be a valid genus. Not that it doesn't exist, it's just now thought to be a junior synonym of the family Varanus, which includes all living monitor lizards today. There are still some researchers, though, that say Megalania is still good for vernacular, so we're just going to keep using it for the video. Now let's actually get a good look at this thing. And if you're like me in my limited prehistoric knowledge, if I see something remotely reptilian and existing in prehistoric times, like Megalania or Dimetrodon, I'm going to think it's a dinosaur. And then some smart person's going to come along and do a slightly amused chuckle and tell me, no, it's not a dinosaur. Because its great ancestor or whatever is not a dinosaur, so therefore it's not a dinosaur. Which is dumb. I mean, it's not, but it is. The better answer is that dinosaurs have other features rather than just their lineage that tells us they're a dinosaur. Certain features in their hips and thighs allow their legs to be directly under them, as opposed to lizards and crocodiles, which have a more sprawled out posture. Back when dinosaurs were still thought to just be giant lizards, British paleontologist Richard Owen started to notice a few things that didn't quite add up to what modern reptilians look like. Specifically, there were 5 fused vertebrae at part of the hip called the sacrum, which was peculiar among reptiles, to which he proposed the name Dinosauria, the terrible lizards, because they were very clearly terrible at being lizards. But I could go on and on about this topic, but just know that Megalania is not a dinosaur. But it does look like a Komodo dragon. As it should. Megalania is related to both the Indonesian and the Australian varanids, like Komodo dragons and parentes, with Komodo dragons being its closest living relative. So because of this, researchers base a lot of what we know of Megalania on the current lifestyle of Komodo dragons. But there's one big difference between the two, and that's their size. Komodo dragons are typically about 7 to 8 feet long, so 2 to 2.5 meters. Maybe up to 3 meters in a really big one. But the size of Megalania is not really known for sure. The problem is there's no complete skeleton or intact skull material for Megalania. We have some skull material, but it's not matched with any non-head material. So you either have a skull or you have not a skull. Vertebra and isolated teeth are the most common fossils, and lower jaws and limb bones have also been found. This has led researchers to argue over the years on how to best determine Megalania's size, or rather which equation is best suited to determine it. As you can see from this table, it's bounced around a lot. From the first estimation being 7 meters or about 23 feet, with a maximum weight of approximately 600 to 620 kilograms, which is basically about 1,300 pounds. In a book published in 2004, Ralph Molnar determined a range of potential sizes for Megalania, made by scaling up from a dorsal vertebra, after he determined a relationship between the width of this vertebra and the total body length. If it had a long, thin tail like a lace monitor, then it would have reached a length of about 7.9 meters or 26 feet. But if its tail to body proportions were more similar to that of a Komodo dragon, then a length of around 7 meters or 23 feet is more likely. And if it was 7 meters, then he estimated a max weight of 1,940 kilograms, which is 4,280 pounds. But a leaner 320 kilograms, or 710 pounds, being more of the average. The latest estimate from 2009, however, had researchers placing the estimate to at least 5.5 meters, or about 18 feet, and 575 kilograms, or about 1,268 pounds. Even though we can't tell exactly how big it would have been, the real question is, how did it get that big in the first place? Because even on the smaller scale, this thing was about twice as big as modern Komodo dragons. With large animals, they usually get big in one of a few ways. They either grow really fast for a short amount of time and then plateau, like in T-Rexes, or they take their normal growth rate and they stretch it out over a longer period of time, like in extinct crocodiles. Or sometimes they do a little bit of both. Like other large varanids, Megalania probably had a very fast growth rate, which it also then extended over a long period of time. So it's growing really fast for a long period of time. The specimen of Megalania we do have shows that it was already 16 years old and only 1.5 meters long, so about 5 feet. So it's 16 years old, only 5 feet, and it's estimated to get to about 23 to 27 feet. It grew for a long time. And because of their non-dinosaurian, sprawled out posture, you can't exactly take a modern monitor lizard and just scale it up to size. Because the bigger they get, the heavier they get. And the heavier they get, the more muscles they need in order to hold that weight up in that posture. There's a really cool paper called How to Build Your Dragon that examines 22 hind limb muscles in a variety of different varanids, ranging from 7.6 grams to 40 kilograms. And what they found was that the scaling of these muscles for large varanids were even more dramatic than they expected. Which makes sense, because I mean, you think of Komodo dragons, and they're already pretty bulky and buff. And you try to think of something that's twice as big as that, and this thing's going to be massive. In return for all of that muscle to basically function, you kind of need to give something up, and in this case it was speed. Megalania's sprinting speed, if you want to call it that, would have been about 5.8 to 6.7 miles per hour, and it definitely wouldn't have been able to hold that for very long. This has led researchers to believe that Megalania may have been more of a scavenger than an actual hunter. And a lot of modern large varanids today are ambush predators and scavengers, but they have one secret weapon, which is venom. Komodo dragons, for example, have a variety of different methods to spring an attack on its prey, like teeth, claws, and sheer blunt force trauma. But if it manages to land a bite, that's all they need, even if the prey escapes. The animal generally dies within a day, and the dragon can calmly locate it and feast. Now, it's not known whether Megalania actually had venom or not, and it'd be pretty hard to tell for sure one way or the other, because we pretty much need a fossilized venom gland or something, and that's really hard to preserve in the fossil record. But the rest of its family generally has venom, so it's pretty likely. And if it did have venom, then it would actually be the largest vertebrate known to have venom. So now that we know that Megalania had a bit of oomph to it, how did it actually stack up to the other predators of the time period? Living in its environment, we had the marsupial lion Thylacoleo and the land-going crocodile Quinaca, which are both much more abundant in the fossil record than Megalania. Now, there could be a lot of reasons for this, including preservation bias, but ultimately what creates more fossils is more deaths. And that's where Megalania's niche could have come into play. Because if you live harder, better, faster, and stronger, well, not faster, but you know what I mean. If you live needing less and live smarter, you're going to live longer. You see, one of the things Megalania had going for it was its resistance to environmental changes. And that's not necessarily just like weather changes and stuff like that, but resource changes. If suddenly all of your food just up and disappears for a while, Megalania can go without a meal a whole lot longer than, say, a Thylacoleo. But there was one change in its environment it ultimately couldn't handle: people. Like many of the early megafauna, humans had a hand in its eventual demise. I mean, at its speed, we can catch up to it at a brisk jog, and it's not even going to go at that speed for a long period of time. So if you're an early human, that's an easy meal for a lot of meat. But it may not have been so one-sided. There's a creature in indigenous Australian folklore called Ohui that is said to resemble a 7-meter long goanna, which is a type of varanid, with a huge frog-shaped head and 6 powerful legs. It's said that while this creature was slow, it was extremely stealthy and could gobble up a whole tribe in a single meal, which, besides the 6 legs, does sound pretty similar. So what the hell was Megalania? Well, it was the biggest lizard to ever walk this earth, and the biggest lizard people ever got the chance to meet. And while it may seem like it's just, a bigger Komodo dragon or something, there's really more to this animal than that. But until we find better fossils and more complete fossils, it's going to be really hard to tell how bad its bite actually was.